Hey! What?
The lift wasn't working and he was in pain, so I tried to lift him on my own. Yes, it's bad. I'll need help.
Can I help you with that?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
What really triggered it was one of my friends who took his own life. I started self-medicating with alcohol. I couldn't sleep. I was having constant nightmares, waking up screaming. A friend of mine referred me to the Legion. I had no idea what services they provided, but that's what eventually forced me to seek the help, and I'm glad I did. It was the best thing that I ever did.
Hello everybody, my name is Jason Piercey and this is Out of the Fog. Good show tonight. We're about providing information to you, fair, so that you can make up your own minds. And tonight, Mr. Jamie Korab, Chair of St. John's Sports and Entertainment, and Mr. Dean MacDonald from Deacon Sports and Entertainment. Dean's the guy that wants to buy Mile 1. Jamie is the guy who is responsible for the group that manages it. You get both sides of the conversation. I'm gonna leave this one up to you. We'll be right back with Jamie Korab right after this.
This is Rogers TV.
Hey everyone, it is Jason Piercey, host of Out of the Fog on Tuesday nights at 7:30. You're definitely gonna wanna watch because you never know what I'm gonna get into. It's all about community. It's all about you. So watch, Tuesday, 7:30.
Watching Rogers TV, St. John's.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. Ladies and gentlemen, say hello to Mr. Jamie Korab. I'm not going to read your whole resume. You're a councillor with the City of St. John's, Ward 3.
Yep.
You are an Olympian. Gold medal back in the day with the boys.
Yes.
Well, everybody knows. I can say Olympian. They know who you are. And you are also, a fellow realtor.
Correct,
and
yes.
the chair of the board of directors for St. John's Sports and Entertainment.
Yep.
The latest press release that you put out said the city is involved in commissioning a study, essentially to determine whether or not this is a good idea. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, so basically back in, I can't remember the exact date, I think around mid-end of October, we decided to commission KPMG to do a report for us. Now, KPMG did a report in 2019. That was around third-party management.
Okay, so not the same questions being asked or answered.
No, so essentially different. So back then it was the Growlers group or Deacon Sport and Entertainment were looking at third-party management where we would still own the building and they would come in and do all the management and whatnot. So we looked at that and decided at that time it wasn't a route that the city was going to go down.
And that's based on what the independent third-party consultant said? It's not in your best interest to have third-party management?
It's not so much they said that. They laid all the reasons, good and bad about it and whatnot, and then it went to the board, and then the board then made a recommendation to council, and ultimately it was decided that, you know, we're going to stick status quo with what we have right now. Since then, the Deacon Sport and Entertainment have come forward and said, well, we want to buy the building, and people have probably seen the website, and there's been lots of media talk about it, so we said, well, if we're going to go down this route, this is something different than before, so we have KPMG, and essentially we're asking KPMG, there's a lot of unknowns here. You know, we as a council, I'm not an expert in selling a municipal asset, you know, multi-million-dollar building. So what are things we need to look out for? What are some of the potential issues that could come up? What, you know, down the road? So there's so many questions we don't even know to ask. So we've commissioned them to do this report. And then essentially the process would be The report is pretty much done now, and it's in the hands of the independent subcommittee of the board. And what that essentially is that members that are citizen members. So no, myself, I'm not on the independent subcommittee of the board. It's no city staff, and it's no one from Mile One. So it's fully independent, and that's something that the city, the board, and Mr. MacDonald all agreed upon. That was a fair process.
Yeah, I think that's the most sensible way to do it. You are, however, the chair of St. John's Sports and Entertainment. So for anybody who's watching who has a cursory view of you and your career, you're pretty good at selling houses, pretty great at curling. Those are like the zoomed out version of who Jamie Korab is. Yep. However, you have all the business in the world being as a part of this chair. So maybe we can give the audience a little bit of context so that they understand. On one side of this table, you have a guy who's a successful business person, has been in major professional sports and entertainment a long time. On this side, you got a guy who also belongs there. So can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah. I mean, not to mention the amount of arenas I've been in across North America and worldwide. I mean, that doesn't give you the know-how to help, not manage, but help, facilitate the management.
Certainly gives perspective.
Yeah, it's certainly some perspective and been enough. But, the way it usually works in council is you're in a 4-year term, and for 2 years you have a certain colored portfolio. That's not what we call it, but you're a council lead.
Sure.
It was Councillor Hickman the first 2 years on this council term because he was the councillor the previous 4 years at the previous council for 2 years. Then when it came up to change roles, we looked around the table and, myself having a sports background, but also my previous job at Bell Alliant, I had about 5 years as the suite manager for Bell Alliant. So had constant chat with the staff, constant interaction. So been in the building, been in the bowels of the building, through the Briar. I was the on-ice host. So, knew a lot about the building, knew a lot about the staff, and not so much the deep inner workings. And as a chair, that's not something I should be involved with anyway.
Yeah.
I'm the chair of the board. So certainly knew the building and knew the people well. So it was a natural fit for me.
So not just some guy.
Not just some guy with funny hair that got elected on the council and decided he wanted to be the chair. Yes.
And then immediately changed his hair.
Yes. Well, the hair had changed a few years ago. But yes.
Okay, so it is my understanding that that the Deacon group is of the opinion that what they're proposing is a win-win, and there isn't a downside. Can you sort of respond to that? Well, first of all, do you think that what I'm saying is an accurate representation of their opinion?
I mean, potentially. Part of the reason why we have KPMG is that what could be the downsides? What's the potential exposure? There's no question that St. John's, as the capital city, needs a building like this. They need, Mile One, they need something, just to touch on it briefly. We now, as the board and Mile One, have some key economic indicators to measure the return on investment. So, the Edge is somewhere around $2 million a year. Growlers is close to $3 million. The convention center, ranges from 13, 18 million a year, and concerts, it's in $1 million. So having a building like this brings in people, it brings in events and whatnot. So there has to be one. So just to park that for a second. In terms of if it makes sense for Mr. MacDonald to have it, that's part of the reason why KPMG will lay some of that out. Should it be private? Should it be something held by the public? If it goes private, then, the city and essentially the citizens lose control, because then it's, if a private group takes it, it's based, they want an ROI, they want a return on their investment. Sure. Whereas the city, very few, if any of these arenas in Canada, in North America, make money. They're meant for economic generators, for the economic benefit for that. So the model is it's slightly different if it's private or if it's with municipality.
So if a private, I'm just thinking about it as a fellow business person and an entrepreneur. If a private industry owns it, I would think if they're ROI driven, which of course means return on your investment, trying to make money, they would have a higher tolerance for risk.
Yes. So
is that a possibility?
Yeah. So that's the other point. So the board and the city a few years back made a decision we were going to be risk adverse. We didn't want to put taxpayers' dollars, because let's face it, Mile
Makes
One,
sense.
Built with taxpayers' money, it's operated with taxpayers' money. So we had to be risk adverse. So it's a promoter that's going to bring the person in. They're taking the risk. If a private operator had it, no question, they can take the risk, they can take more risk. So there's two sides of it. What's the best? It's hard to say at this point. Again, that's why KPMG we source them out.
So in a nutshell, KPMG, they won't tell you to do or not to do something, but the intention of this report is to give enough information that an educated group of people who have the best interest of our municipality in mind will be able to interpret that data and lay out all key indicators so that somebody can make the right decision.
Exactly. So in a nutshell, the independent subcommittee, they'll bring it to the board. The board will then meet on it, however many meetings that takes. Then they'll make a recommendation to council. And ultimately, it's council's decision, as it is, a city asset. So, I know myself as the chair, and I can speak for the rest of council, we don't want this to drag on any longer than it has to. And I know Mr. MacDonald, they're eager. If there's
another election coming up. If in the fall, maybe next fall?
To be September, the third week of September usually.
If the Court of Public Appeal has already said sell the building, not saying that they have, and then you're the guy who steps up and says, I read the report, the recommendation to council, we're going to go through the due process. I mean, that only bodes well for you and Danny Breen and everybody else, if that's what the public likes. In the event that the council decides selling this is a good idea, based on the results of the report and the data, what does it look like? Is there a process already in place?
Not so much. There's normally with the Public Procurement Act and basically legislation, the City Act, there's set processes for certain things. There's not really a set process for this. With that said, if we were to decide, I don't think the city would say, yep, we're going to sell the building. It would be, look, this is something we need to pursue. Something we don't pursue, we're not selling it, go away.
Or an option, let's investigate.
Let's look at it. So let's put it on an RFI, which is request for information, or an RFP, which is request for proposals. And let's see, because right now with the Deacon Group, Mr. MacDonald, they have the website, they've expressed interest, but we haven't talked figures, we haven't talked what they're looking for, other than, the size of the building and the things they're looking to put in there.
So I guess it's really fair for everybody from the city to say, if we agree that exploring selling it is a good idea, we want to do it in the fairest way to make sure that we maximize what we can get for this property and that it's better for the city. I think everybody agrees with that?
Yeah, we won't be sole sourcing it. We're not selling, as I've said before, we're not selling a used car in Kijiji. This is a tens of millions of dollars facility. So we'd put it out there. I'll just use an example in Moncton. They built an arena a couple years ago. They've got a group, I believe they're from Europe, that come in. The city owns the building, and this group pays the city of Moncton I think it's around $350,000 a year to use this building. And the city's still responsible. The city still puts capital, investment into, different things, the infrastructure. So there's different models. So the reason why we would put it out there is there could be a group from the States, from Canada.
Yeah, let's get all the information to decide what model's best.
Because again, it's built with taxpayers' money, and the taxpayers, some people kind of accuse us of, well, why don't you just sell it? Well,
you're accountable
it's not
to
that
a whole
easy.
lot of people.
Yeah, and it's kind of what you said with the election coming up. I will never make a decision, I can say that wholeheartedly, that I'm making so I get reelected. If
I hear you.
I'm making decisions so I sleep well at night because I know I'm doing what's in the best interest. If I make a decision, it means I don't get elected, then, that 4 years is done in politics.
Last question.
Yeah.
And I would like this one to be yes or no because I'm already over and they're telling me to wrap up. Personal opinion, human being, resident of St. John's, not councillor, not chair of a board. Do you think this is a cool idea?
I think the concept is a great idea, but the devil's in the details, and we got to find a whole lot more information.
Cool idea, execution is very important.
The details matter. Yeah, for sure.
Right. Amazing. Councillor Korab, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back after.
All right, girls.
Mom, you said it's played again.
Workplace injuries hurt the most at home.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. No stranger to our couch. Well, not our couch, it's a chair now. We're at least 6 feet apart. Mr. Dean MacDonald, of course, chair of Deacon Sports and Entertainment, notably locally in the news as the guy who wants to start owning at least a part of Mile 1 and making it look pretty like this.
Absolutely.
And the Growlers and a little bit of stuff about Come By Chance Refinery and blah, blah, blah. We got a lot to talk about.
Great.
Let's start with a thank you for taking the time to come out.
Anytime.
I know you're not exactly sitting home doing this all day, every day.
Might not be as busy as you think.
Twiddling your thumbs. Well, give me an idea of, just very cursory for anybody who hasn't been paying attention, living under a rock. What are you up to these days?
Well, you know, we're spending a lot of time in professional sports. We just were awarded 2 franchises in the U.S., one in the U.S., Iowa, and an amphitheater park there, and another franchise for Trois-Rivières, both ECHL teams. So busy on that, busy trying to pitch the notion of improving our Mile 1 Center and investing significant funds in it to modernize the facility and operate the facility and save the city and taxpayers the money that's currently subsidizing that facility. So that's kind of a lot of our energy.
I imagine there's obviously more than one side to every story.
Yeah.
Of course. The city has an asset that the public seems to think is underutilized and costs money. I say seems to think because I haven't saw the books, right? And you have an idea that you think can help with that. What's your impression of how the public feels about what you're pitching?
You know, look, we're getting overwhelming support that people think it's a good idea. People think it's a win-win. So everyone wins in this. You know, you get you mentioned it's an asset, but it loses $3 million a year. So, you know, it's hard to call that an asset if you're losing that. But there is public good associated with a facility like this. So we respect that. And look, at the end of the day, we've said we'd like to partner with the city on the improvements. It's all about investing back in our community. We feel really passionately about it, and we think we bring a lot of expertise to the table. So if I'm the city, look, we're not the boogeyman. We're here to help. We think we have a really good solution. I haven't heard anyone else step up with an alternative. I haven't heard the city have an alternative. The city does have itself its hands full because, you know, the building is nearing its useful life end. And so they're going to have to make significant investment, and I think they're going to have a hard time coming up with the money.
So you're basically saying, let me make that significant, well, I don't mean you personally, but let Deacon Sports and Entertainment make that, or some subsidiary, make that investment, create some possible partnership, or just acquire the property and the rights to it, or like, in an ideal world, what would you do?
You know, in an ideal world, we do as we've proposed, you know, invest, or we think it's a $20 to $25 million investment to make the building look like that and bring a whole bunch of new services to the building, make it a 365-day-a-year facility, bring the arts community actively involved in the facility. And, but, you know, look, we'd love to partner with the city because then we know we're always aligned. And, you know, if we're partnered with the city, it'll probably make the process go faster in terms of all the construction, and, et cetera, that has to happen there. But at the end of the day, look, if you follow our idea or our vision, for want of the better term, is there's going to be an awful lot more jobs down there, an awful lot more things happening at the building. That all drives a vibrant downtown. We saw what happened with the Water Street formula this summer. Look, we want to be part of the solution. We live here, we love it here, and we like to invest our money here.
So, from your perspective in trying to move forward in this, what are the obstacles that you are seeing, and what are the ones that you are being presented with? Like, what are you coming across that you know what I mean, that you're stumbling up in, and then what are other people saying to you, this is the problem?
So generally, look, I'd say it's 95-5. 95 is saying go, go, go. We think it's great. It's love to see the initiative. The boo birds would be, you know, concerned about, you know, is the city going to get the right value for the building? You know, if this guy runs it or this guy buys it, will they never bid on a Briar or events? Which, you know, of course we will. Will it impact negatively effectively economic development in the city. So one of the things we did, we put out a website called New Mile One about 10 days ago, and answered all those questions. Of course, we're going to bid on the Briar. Of course, we're going to bid on events because that's the business we're in. And in fact, we're working with Live Nation in Trois-Rivières and in Iowa and in our amphitheater park. So we actually, because of our connections to the entertainment world, we actually will probably be able to bring a whole lot more here that otherwise wouldn't be here. And of course, as a private business, we're willing to take the risk on it. We don't have to make money on every concert.
Yeah, and you don't need to be accountable to the public if you lose that money because you booked $1 million act and couldn't sell it out or something. And just for anybody who's watching, Mr. MacDonald mentioned an organization called Live Nation. Live Nation is probably the biggest...
The largest in the world, yeah.
Yeah, the largest entertainment booking company. So that's how you get really, really... the acts that we all wish we could have. Yeah. Instead of getting like maybe the same guy 8 or 9 times over the course of however long.
Sure, and I guarantee you, we will bring in acts that we won't make money on. It just, you don't win them all, but it's, you want to win the long run. It's a war, not a battle, and so you want to win the war. And so look, but that's part of building an audience, building a franchise, building a loyalty is we have to entertain.
Is it, fundamentally, does this come down to the difference between running a business and what a business is designed to do, like as a corporation or like in a capitalist society? Is it fundamentally a difference between running a business and running a municipality? Are there different mandates?
Well, yes and no. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you run a business and you run a business that loses money all the time, you won't be running that business. And in a municipality, if you run the municipality and lose a lot of money, is presumably someone's going to hold you accountable, whether that's if you're elected or even as an employee. Presumably what gets measured gets done, and you're accountable. So accountability is ultimately the issue here. So from our perspective, we don't think we're misaligned in goals and objectives. Like if we've presented our idea here. It's yes, we want to improve facility. Yes, we want a 365-day a year large sports bar or sports music bar that reflects the history of the province in sport and music. We want to put an esports facility in. We want to put new concessions in that makes the fan experience better. We want to put theaters in. We want to put a sound recording studio in for the arts. So it's like it's making the facility right now, by and large, is it does some concerts, does some general skating, and it does the professional teams. So we're going to make it way more accessible to the public. In fact, if you look at the model there, you see the accessibility to the building is actually straight off the street instead of going over stairs. So there's actually an accessibility issue. So look, from our perspective, we think the goals are aligned. It's really an issue of political will.
The municipality is saying there is a process in place. We're going to go through the due diligence. We're going to do it properly because we are accountable to our constituents.
Absolutely.
All of those things make sense to me.
Yeah.
How do you feel about those statements?
We've from day one have said that they should go through a process. That makes sense. They are accountable to the public. We would put an asterisk by it and say, can you hurry up? Yeah. We've been reaching out to these guys since early last year to have a discussion about this. They say they can't have a discussion because there's a process in place. Well, there's a process in place to tell council what they should consider, the pros and cons of selling the building. But there's not a formal process in place asking for people to bid on this.
So there's no bylaw in the city of St. John's that says if we want to sell a piece of publicly owned property or whatever, this is step 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Well, I'm sure the notion would be that they have to run a process. They have to do an RP or expressions of interest, and if the law isn't there, it's not a bad law to have. I think our point is, look, there isn't a process. They haven't decided whether they're interested in selling this building or not. So on the basis they haven't made that decision, and that the report that they're having done probably isn't going to tell them whether to sell the building or not, we're saying, like, why don't we sit down around a table and discuss the art of the possible? In fact, it could help them on their RFP process because it might give them better questions to ask, and, right? Like so the process here is for a good outcome. Look, we've advocated that if someone else comes forward who wants to invest as we do and wants to do something bigger and better and better for citizens, well, look, we have to stand up and applaud them and say, good on you. Go for it.
I hear you. Okay, so that makes sense to me, because that was the next thing that I was going to ask you about. I have one last thing, because we're nearly out of time. One last thing that I want to bring up. You were also part of an organization who attempted to acquire the refinery in Come By Chance.
Absolutely.
After the previous deal fell apart.
Yep.
It didn't go together, and I don't know if it was media only or other people involved in the process came back and said, well, Mr. MacDonald, are you interested in trying again? And you very clearly said, no. I don't want that to be foreshadowing about mile one. I just as a personal preference, this is not Rogers, this is nobody
Nor
else.
I.
Yeah, right? I don't want that to be foreshadowing about mile one.
Yeah.
Is that something that people should be paying attention to?
You know, one of the problems with answering your question is there's a little bit of, if I give the wrong answer, there's kind of a, he wants to take his puck and go home, and so it makes it adversarial.
It's sort of an unfair question.
Well, no, it's not at all. Look, in the Come By Chance case, we knew that our bid was the same as the previous bid they accepted. So for us to change our bid we were only bidding against ourselves.
It's ludicrous,
yeah. So, but in the case of mile one, the issue is that, look, we've spent the last 2 months making the assumption that they won't make this move. You know, they've been kicking and screaming. It hasn't been like, oh my God, wow, we have some. Imagine if they were sitting around the council table 6 months or a year ago going, do you think we could find a sucker to come in and put $25 million in that building and save us $3 million a year in operating? Oh no, that sucker doesn't exist. Well, actually he does. He does. And so the irony here is that, look, we've spent the last 2 months assuming that we won't get past a green light on this, and so we're looking at, you know, should we build our own facility?
Okay, I hear you.
We've accessed
so you're not going to take your puck and go home?
No, I mean, and building our own facility isn't an easy task, let me tell you. But it'll be new, and we'll have, you know, we'll have full management of the facility. So look, there's more options. The last thing we want to do is not have the team here. We love it here. Okay. We're from here. You know, honestly, you know, the Trial Revere franchise is set up as it can be either a new franchise or a transfer. So if we run into all sorts of walls, well, at least we have a way to protect the investment we've made here. And but it's not our wish by any measure. Yeah. You know.
Mr. MacDonald, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Always a fan. And ladies and gentlemen, from the self-proclaimed sucker, fingers crossed.
There's one born every minute.
Fingers crossed that we can find a solution that works for everybody. We'll be right back after this.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.
Welcome back to Out of the Fog. I don't know, folks. I think this one is a bit of a head scratcher. I see both sides of the conversation. Personally, I would love brand new building and fancy things and recording studios for the arts community and a new movie theater because competition is good for the end consumer. But I also don't want our city to get ripped off because somebody didn't go through the right process. So maybe we all just try and get along, tell the truth, be open and honest, and in the end, see what happens. That is it for tonight. We will see you again next week, but hopefully something equally as interesting. Have a great night.
Call the Rogers TV viewer response line, email us, or connect with us on social media.